we have a very distinguished guest here and an unexpected, equally distinguished guest today as a bonus. So we shall begin the day's activities with a silent prayer.
Respected chief guest of the day, Shri Sudeep Syam, one of the noted poetic voices of our times. Dr. Syam Sudhakar, assistant professor from St. Thomas College, who is also a poet. Dear colleagues and my dear students, the Department of English of Achuthamenon College feels greatly privileged and honored to have a very eminent contemporary poetic voice today with us. Shri Sudeep Syam, he is not only a poet, he is a translator and an artist, and he deals with many relevant contemporary issues with a touch of novelty. We have his work, Anthropocene, which deals with climate change and also pandemic. I welcome you, sir, to our function. Let me also welcome Dr. Syam Sudhakar. He is an academic, a translator and a poet, a friend of the department. He is a friend of our English department because I remember 3 years back he had engaged a session of poetry as part of the English Association inauguration. And he is a translator of the works, the poems of Shri Sudeep Syam. I'm very happy to have you here, sir. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the function. And I welcome the coordinator, the coordinator of the program, president teacher, my dear colleagues and dear students. So, thank you.
Photographer, artist, whatnot. He has been into the fore many years, and he is recently innovating in the concept of photography also, because the book Anthropocene is a revelation of many. Equally, you see that's not one aspect that he stands out to. So you can hear it from the lion's mouth itself. I invite our chief guest for the day, Sudeep sir, for the keynote address.
Namaskar, Vanakkam. Everybody's looking nice and bright, which is wonderful. It's always a pleasure to talk to students, readers.
Yeah, show your book. Yeah, sure.
We met about 7 years ago at Sahitya Academy, and he was one of the young poets asked to translate my work. And that's the fruit of the lovely association. He's a dear young friend. From slate remnants of a medieval church apse, from soil tilled by my ancestors. My bones don't fit together correctly as they should. The searing ultraviolet light from Aurora Borealis patches and edge corrects my orientation. Magnetic pulses prove potent. My flesh sculpted from the fruits of the tropics, blood from coconut water, skin colored by brown bark of Indian teak. My lungs fueled by Delhi's insidious toxic air, echo asthmatic sounds, a new vinyl dub remix. Our universe where radiation germinates from human follies, where contamination persists from mistrust, where pleasures of sex are merely a sport, where everything is ambition, everything is desire, everything is nothing, nothing and everything. White light everywhere, but no one can recognize its hue. No one knows that there is color in it, all possible colors. Body worshipped not for its blessing, but its contour. Artificial shape shaped by Nautilus. Skin moistened by L'Oreal and not by season's first rains. Skeleton strength not shaped by earthquakes or slow molded by fearless forest fires. Unpeopled hollow metal shells without breaks swerve about, directionless, looking for an elusive compass. In a way that it never used to be the case before. To the point that we don't even know what truth is. There's post-truth, there's post-truth. There's fake news, but there's no truth anymore. So partly it deals with all that, but on a personal level, this is a poem that is a homage to my first typewriter which I bought. This was in my high school days, early college days. I used to do a lot of debating and quizzing, and there used to be prize money. So my first collected prize money, I bought myself a second-hand typewriter, which still works. It's still on my desk. The problem now, of course, is sourcing the red and black ribbon. Often the ribbons are more expensive than the typewriter itself because they've now become antique pieces. Language. It opens with an epigraph from Italo Calvino, and I quote, "Without translation, I would be limited to the borders of my own country. The translator is my most important ally." My typewriter is multilingual, its keys mysteriously calibrating my bipolar forked tongue. Black red silk ribbon spools unwind as the carriage moves right to left. In cursive handles pump blood, corpuscle-like alphabets, phrases, syntax cross-fertilize my text, breathing life. Texture enriched, music, cadence spatially enhanced, osmotic, polyglottal, a polygamy of grammar. Letter forms dance, ligatures pirouette, ascenders, descenders, pitch perfect. Imagination isn't caged in speech. Speech cannot be caged in language. This is a short poem called That Is, I dot E dot. And if we have time later after the discussion, we can see the song and film version of this poem. I do a lot of collaboration with classical dancers and musicians, and this person called Heather Shepherd. She's a songwriter and musician in Oregon. During the pandemic time, when this book came out, we had to do a lot of Zoom events, as you know, and she used to be there for a lot of my programs, and then I get a little email from her saying that, I bought the book, and would it be okay if I make them into some songs? So of course you are thrilled and say yes. And since then she's made taken 12 of the poems and made them into songs, and now we just released an album on Spotify. And this is one of the poems she's sung. You'll see it later. It's dedicated to my son Arya, spelled A-R-I-A, who calls me Mama Baba at the same time because I've single fathered him for a few decades. And when I sent the poem to him, of course he said, "Oh no, one more poem from Baba," you know. But what surprised me was he told me that he actually likes the poem, though he confessed that he has no idea what this is about. But I was happy that at least it tickled his aesthetic nerves. That was good enough for me. That is because you hear the sound of a lone silent. You hear its silence in my studio. That is, and because of that, the silence will not empty the sea of its leaves. A very well-behaved audience. Either you're completely bored and quiet, or sorry? Bowled over, okay. So you should be hired as the diplomat for the department. Yeah. Okay, so this is to bowl over the current government. So Delhi, of course, faced, the pandemic was bad all over the world, all over India and so on, but I've never seen such horrific sights in Delhi, especially during the first wave. Car parks were turned into crematorium grounds, pavements, people were being burnt on the pavements. I've only heard from my grandparents and parents about the partitions and horrors of partitions, seen films, read books. But as an individual, I had never seen horror of that kind. And this was the first time I thought this is probably as close to the partition burnings and deaths that were happening all around me. And just there was a paucity of burial grounds, and at the same time, the center of Delhi was being dug up to make Disneyland, Parliament structures there. So that's where we are living. It's called Om, a ceremony, and it has a small line from Gethe in the beginning, which is architecture of frozen music. Also in this poem there are lines from Agha Shahid Ali, the wonderful Kashmiri Indian poet. All of you who know his work will recognize the lines I'm referring to. Om, a ceremony. In my city, I'm surrounded by constant cries of the dying, burning pyres heaving under burden of wood, smoke, and bones. Wailing summed up by sonic notes of Om. Civilization's first sound, Sanskrit syllable echoing in a conch shell's harmonic mapping, its involute spiral geometry holding within and emanating airborne sonar screams. My ancestors, grandmothers, mothers blew into the smooth shell cupped in their palms, held intimately as if it were a talisman, a prayer, a pranayam in yoga's daily ritual. But breathing is such a privilege these days. Pandemic struck, oxygen deprived, my friends perish, the country buckles, airless. Even an exquisite ceremony lacks the sheen of wax to wrap the contours of a corpse now. Each day as I write endless condolence notes, etching dirge-like couplets on gravestones, my city continues to be dug up not to make space for burial signs. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So this is from the Parliament edition. If you are worthy readers, it's available on Amazon, which is how you should read it actually. I'll shift to Fractals, which is the book Syam chose poems to translate from. Maybe I'll sit there, it'll be easier for us to read together. So this is a poem called Ma, and I wrote it in 2013 when my mother expired. I wasn't there when my mother died, so I had to rush back, and I went to the hospital, and she was already in the morgue, in the freezer. And they didn't allow me to see her body because, bills had to be paid, which took a few days. Then I went to the morgue with the receipts of all the cleared bills. The person in the morgue says, no, we need the death certificate. My mother was officially dead for a few days, but the guy at the morgue still wanted me to prove that she's dead. So then of course I ran around the municipal offices to get the certificate. And of course the certificate, one is not enough for Indians. They needed in triplicate, stamped by a gazetted officer, some stupid person who hasn't even met my mother, to validate the fact that my mother is not there anymore. And being the eldest in the family, of course, after that, the first couple of months was just spent feeding the community, doing all sorts of pujas and feeding really fat priests to get even fatter. And their demands are interesting, they want the highest quality of ghee, 5 dhotis, 10 cots, silk saris for their wives, completely callous. So this is the beautiful country we live in. I love my country, I live here, but we have to introspect and really think about a lot of things that are severely wrong. Ma. As if in a dream, you disappeared unannounced, untimely and unprepared. The handwritten diary you left behind weepingly revealed your sordid, searing pain. Grief-struck, I ran around the city's municipal offices, rummaging through bureaucratic files, seeking your death certificate for validation, as if losing you wasn't loss enough.
അമ്മ രത്നാസൻ 1940 2013 വെച്ച് ഒരു സ്വപ്നത്തിലെന്ന പോലെ നീ അലിഞ്ഞു പോയിരിക്കുന്നു. ഒന്നും പറയാതെ, നിലച്ചിരിക്കാതെ. നീ എഴുതി വെച്ച നിന്റെ ഡയറി വിതുമ്പിക്കൊണ്ട് തുറന്നു കാട്ടുന്നു നിന്റെ നീറ്റലും വേദനയും. മുനിസിപ്പൽ ഓഫീസുകളിലെ കെട്ടുപിണഞ്ഞ ഫയലുകൾക്കും കച്ചേരി കോയ്മുകൾക്കും ഇടയിലൂടെ ഞാൻ ചുറ്റിത്തിരിയുന്നു, ദുഃഖം നെഞ്ചിൽ അടക്കി പിടിച്ച്. നിന്റെ മരണ സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റിന് വേണ്ടി നിന്നെ നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടത് വേണ്ടത്ര ഒരു നഷ്ടമല്ലാത്തതുപോലെ.
How does it read in Malayalam? You don't have to say nice things because it's sitting there. Yeah, it's a real treat actually to hear your poems in another language and see people responding. And Syam is such a wonderful poet and translator that he's very sensitive. And he chose the poems which I'm going to read. Often, sometimes I don't read these poems. Ma is particularly difficult to read, I find, even though it's after so many years. And this next one he likes is called Safe. This was an old kind of colonial house in Pondicherry, which has now been restored as a guest house. And I stayed there. And in my room, there was this safe on the wall, embedded in the wall with a lock. And so I was very curious, whether the owner had the key. And they said, we have a key, but the superstition is that don't open it because, it's been there for so many years. We plastered over it and who knows what's behind it. And it's not good luck, apparently. And of course, another person in the house said, but you should take it out because that neighbor, there was lots of money and jewelry that came out. Anyway, so the whole thing was very intriguing, and just I used to look at it every day when I lay down in the bed because it was right in front of me. And crazy people like poets end up writing about strange things. Safe. In room 4, the safe embedded in the wall has not been opened in 150 years. It has seen history, life changing, aging, but no one knows what lies within. The keyhole looks worn, paint stripped, pockmarked, knife gouged, dented scars of attempted break-ins, worn openly without care. But what is inside? The first owner's ashes, a will, wealth, gold, old currencies, lovers' relics. Perhaps it is best kept as a mystery in a world where there is so little of it. A spider runs across the safe, weaving silver strands. Nature strings her own signs of preservation or protection. A web masking talisman. Flies buzz around, marking out their territory in annoying tenor. Walls peeling, lines fade off, whitewash, failing to conceal time, lose their glue. A train of hands en route elsewhere get distracted at the keyhole's gate. Some tunnel in, but even after days on end, I do not see them emerge out again.
പണപ്പെട്ടി ട്രാൻസ്ലേറ്റ് ചെയ്യും. 4-ാം നമ്പർ മുറിയിലുള്ള ചുവരിൽ പണിത പണപ്പെട്ടി 150 വർഷങ്ങളായി ആരും തുറന്നിട്ടില്ല. അന്ന് ചരിത്രം കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ട് ജീവിതം മാറുന്നത്, പ്രായമാകുന്നത്. പക്ഷെ ആർക്കും അറിയില്ല അതിനുള്ളിൽ എന്തെന്ന്. താക്കോൽ ദ്വാരം തേഞ്ഞു പോയിരിക്കുന്നു, പെയിന്റ് ഇളകിയിരിക്കുന്നു. ഒരു മുറിവിന്റെ കല, കത്തികൊണ്ട് തുറക്കാൻ നോക്കിയതിന്റെ ചതവുകൾ, കലകൾ. ഒരു കരുതലുമില്ലാതെ പൂട്ടു തുറക്കാൻ ശ്രമിച്ചതിന്റെ അടയാളങ്ങൾ. പക്ഷേ അതിനുള്ളിൽ എന്ത്? ആദ്യത്തെ അവകാശിയുടെ ചിതാഭസ്മം, അവളുടെ വിൽപത്രം, സമ്പത്ത്, സ്വർണം, പുതിയ നോട്ടുകെട്ടുകൾ, പ്രണയത്തിന്റെ ബാക്കി പത്രം. ഒരുപക്ഷെ അതിന്റെ നിഗൂഢത അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഇരിക്കട്ടെ. നിഗൂഢതകൾ നഷ്ടമായിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു കാലത്ത് ഒരു ചിലന്തി അതിനു ചുറ്റും ഓടുന്നു, വെള്ളിവലകൾ നെയ്യുന്നു. പ്രപഞ്ചത്തിന്റെ നൂലിൽ സൂക്ഷിച്ചു വെക്കാനുള്ള അവളുടെ രീതി, സംരക്ഷിക്കാൻ വല കൊണ്ട് അവൾ ജപിച്ചിരുന്ന ഉറുക്ക്. ഈച്ചകൾ പതിവായി ആ വഴി നടക്കുന്നു. അവയുടെ സഞ്ചാരപഥം, അസഹ്യമായ അവയുടെ ക്രമം, ചുവരിൽ പൂശിയ വെള്ള വാർദ്ധക്യത്തെ മൂടിവെക്കാൻ പാടുപെടുന്നു. പശ നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ട് ആ വഴി പോകുന്ന ഉറുമ്പുകളുടെ ഒരു തീവണ്ടി താക്കോൽ പിളർപ്പിൽ പാളം തെറ്റുന്നു. ആ വഴി പോകുന്ന ഉറുമ്പുകളുടെ ഒരു തീവണ്ടി താക്കോൽ പിളർപ്പിൽ പാളം തെറ്റുന്നു. അകത്തേക്കുള്ള ഒരു തുരങ്കം. പക്ഷേ ദിവസങ്ങൾ കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ടും ഞാൻ കാണുന്നില്ല പുറത്തേക്കുള്ള വഴി. ഇദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ സ്വീറ്റ്സിന് going to tell a secret.
You better translate it.
ഞാൻ ഇദ്ദേഹത്തിനെ മീറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് ഒരു 5-6 വർഷം മുൻപാണ് നേരിട്ട് മീറ്റ്, ഒരു 7 വർഷം മുൻപാണ് നേരിട്ട് മീറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. പക്ഷെ ഇദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ കവിതകള് ഒരു പ്രത്യേക രീതിയിലുള്ളൊരു കവിതകളാണ്. നമ്മൾ മലയാളത്തിൽ പരിചയമില്ലാത്ത ഒരു രീതിയാണ് ഈ ഒരു ടൈപ്പ് ഓഫ് കവിതകൾ. ഇത് ഞാനൊരു എനിക്കൊരു 10-18 ഞാനൊരു സ്കൂളിൽ ഒരു +2 പഠിക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് രാജീവൻ ഒരിക്കല് മാസിഡോണിയയിൽ ഒരു റീഡിങ്ങിന് പോയിരുന്നു. ITP രാജീവൻ. അപ്പൊ എന്റെ അടുത്ത് ചോദിച്ചു വരുന്നോന്ന് ചോദിച്ചു. അപ്പൊ അന്ന് 35,000 രൂപ കൊടുത്തു അവിടെ ട്രാവൽ ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടി. അപ്പോ സുദീപ് ആണ് അന്ന് ആ പ്രോഗ്രാം കണ്ടക്ട് ചെയ്തിരുന്നത് സ്റ്റുഗ ഫെസ്റ്റിവലിലെ ഒരു ഇതായിരുന്നു. അന്ന് ഞാൻ പോയില്ല. ഞാനത് പറഞ്ഞു തരുന്നതെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ഇന്ന് ഞാൻ സുദീപിനോട് ഇന്ന് വൈകുന്നേരങ്ങൾ ഇന്നലെ വൈകുന്നേരം ഞങ്ങൾ ഒന്നിച്ചിരിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഞാൻ പറയുന്നത് എനിക്കിപ്പോ അത് നഷ്ടബോധം തോന്നുന്നു. ഞാനത് പറയുന്നതെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എപ്പോഴെങ്കിലും ഇത്തരം ഒരു അവസരം ലൈഫിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ പ്രായത്തിൽ അത് കിട്ടും, ഒരു വലിയൊരു അവസരം. അന്ന് വലിയ ഇതില്ലാതെ ആക്ച്വലി ഇത് ചെയ്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ പിന്നീട് ഒരു ദുഃഖിക്കേണ്ടി വരില്ല. ഇന്നൊരു എനിക്ക് ആ രസം തോന്നുന്നുണ്ട് ആ ഒരു സാധനം. പക്ഷെ അന്ന് മാസിഡോണിയയിൽ ആ ഫെസ്റ്റിവലിന് പോവാമായിരുന്നു എന്ന് എനിക്ക് ഇപ്പൊ തോന്നുന്നുണ്ട്. ഒരു വലിയ സാധനമാണ്. ഇപ്പൊ നീ റൂമിൽ വരുമ്പോ ഈ ഒരു ബ്യൂട്ടിഫുൾ ആയിട്ട് ഈ റൂം ഞാൻ ആദ്യമായിട്ട് കാണുന്നത്. ഭയങ്കര രസമുള്ള റൂമും ഈ ഒരു സംഭവമൊക്കെ ഞാൻ ആദ്യമായിട്ട് കാണുന്നത്. ഭയങ്കര ഒരു ഇതായിട്ട് തോന്നി. അവിടെ ഒരു ബ്യൂട്ടിഫുൾ ആയിട്ടൊരു വേൾഡിൽ ഒരു മൂലക്കിൽ ഒരു എട്ടുകാലി അവിടെ ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു മൂലക്കിൽ എട്ടുകാലി ഇല്ലാത്ത ചലത്തിവല മാത്രം ഒരു കോർണറിൽ മാത്രം ഞാൻ കാണാൻ പറ്റുന്നുണ്ട് വലത്തോട്ട് ആ ഒരു കോർണർ. അതുപോലെയാണ് ഒരു റൈറ്റർ ആക്ച്വലി ബാക്കി നിർത്തുന്ന എട്ടുകാലി മരിച്ചാലും ബാക്കി നിർത്തുന്ന ഒരു ചലന്തിവല പോലെയാണ് പോയിട്രി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ സുദീപിന്റെ ഈ ഒരു സ്ഥലത്തിൽ എട്ടുകാലിയുടെ വല നിങ്ങൾ ശ്രദ്ധിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടാവും. ഈ ഒരു അതൊരു ഒരു വലയാണ് ശരിക്കും ഒരു വേൾഡ്. ഇതില് പ്രധാനമായിട്ട് എനിക്ക് അന്ന് മുതൽ ആകർഷിച്ചത് ബ്യൂട്ടിഫുൾ ഇമേജസ് പിന്നെ ഒരു തരം ഫ്രാഗ്മെന്റ് കൺസ്ട്രക്ഷൻ. ആ ഒരു സാധനം ഞാൻ പറയുന്നത് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് റിസർച്ചും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അത്തരം സാധനങ്ങളിലൊക്കെ സാധ്യത ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നിലവിലുള്ള ഒരു നോവൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു നോവൽ ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരു തിയറി എടുക്കുന്നു ഇങ്ങനത്തെ സാധനങ്ങൾ അറിയേണ്ട സുദീപിന്റെ പോലുള്ള കവിതകൾ ഇതുപോലുള്ള കവിതകൾ കണ്ടംപററി ഇതിന്റെ സാധ്യത എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ യു ക്യാൻ ഇന്റർവ്യൂ ഹിം. അങ്ങനെ കുറെ സാധ്യതകളുണ്ട് നിങ്ങൾക്ക്. ഇത്തരം ഇതുണ്ടല്ലോ നേരിട്ടിട്ട് ഒരു റൈറ്ററിനെ നിങ്ങളുടെ കയ്യിൽ കിട്ടിയിരിക്കുകയാണ്. അതായത് മറ്റേ സൂവിലല്ലാതെ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഒരു സിംഹത്തിനെ നേരിട്ട് കാണാൻ പറ്റുക എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഒരു കാര്യമുണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ അതുകൊണ്ട് യു ഷുഡ് ആക്ച്വലി മേക്ക് യൂസ് ഓഫ് ഇറ്റ്. ആ ഒരു രീതിയിൽ there is a larger scope of research. I was just telling them about the scope of research in contemporary poets. So there is a larger scope of research. So why don't you make use of it? അങ്ങനെ ഒരു സാധനം. കാരണം മടുത്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞിരിക്കുന്ന റിസർച്ച് ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരു നോവൽ എടുത്ത് അതിൽ ഫെമിനിസം അപ്ലൈ ചെയ്യുക. ആൻഡ് ഓൾമോസ്റ്റ് ഓൾ ദ റിസർച്ചേഴ്സ് ആർ ദ സെയിം. That you apply some kind of feminism in the Roy's novel, and then what is the use of it, and how can you call it as a research?
And nobody reads it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the sad thing. You spend 5 years of your precious time, and it makes absolutely no contribution. How many times can we write about Shakespeare and the same Rushdie and the Nightfall? I mean, we need to go beyond. I mean, there's a wealth of very, very fine contemporary poetry in India, and we are alive. The irony is, of course, when I teach abroad, and 36 universities are teaching my work in their literature courses, in the English literature courses, not as an Indian writer. Several PhDs are being done there, but India will wait until I'm in the mall and my son has got his triplicate death certificate, and then they might think, oh, that guy wrote some poetry. That is the sad tragedy. So in fact, I just want to, like he's saying, I mean, there's a wealth of, why are we translating each other? I mean, he translated me because we just like each other's poetry. Second bonus was he became a good friend. And to the third bonus, which is his primary bonus, was he ended up wooing my friend's daughter and he's married her now. So he had got so many benefits out of just simple poetry. Very beautiful daughter. They have a beautiful child now. I can attest it without a gazetted officer. I have it on the phone. So yeah, what he's saying is very important because make use of us. We are accessible when you're doing research and the person is alive. I mean, the kind of wealth of quality you can get out of it. And there's a lot of work that is already done which is available. So yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because
Sudeep, I thought I will pretend as if I am single, but you...
He's single in public. He's a good-looking single man in public, yeah. I'm single at least. I'm a single father for many, many years, so happiness.
Yeah, he was running around and telling this that I'm single father, and then he purposely read this book actually to say that he's single.
It has its benefits, yes. Which one are we doing now? Maybe I'll read the Bharatanatyam poem. That doesn't have a translation, but I'll read it anyway because it's an interesting one. I'm very, very keen on classical Indian dance and music. It's been an obsession of mine. I can't dance myself, I'm flat-footed. I love watching people dance, and I can't sing, but I think I have a good ear, and I listen to a lot of music. My mother used to be a dancer, not a professional dancer, but Bengalis are a strange beast. We talk endlessly, we consume a lot of food, there's a lot of music, poetry and dance in our family. People are always arguing happily. Mostly it ends up not in a fight, but in more eating and drinking. Yes, there's a lot of drinking like this state as well. I've discovered in the last 2.5 weeks. My God, man, you guys can funnel it down. It's difficult to keep up with the Malayali. So anyway, this is a poem called Bharatanatyam Dancer. It was the first in the series of poems I wrote on dance. Hopefully the book should come out at the end of the year or next year. It's called The Whispering Anklet, Payal. And it has poems responding to Mohiniyattam, Kathakali, Kadalipattu, all sorts of things. Ballet. And this was one of the first ones I wrote. And it's an interesting experience because, when you're watching a person perform, dancer or a musician or even us at the moment, we are on a proscenium stage. So there's the x-axis and the y-axis, the height of the stage and the width of the stage. The z-axis is the depth which you imagine. That's the usual format. So when she was rehearsing, I said, wouldn't it be interesting for me to watch it from the top, the light boy, the bird's eye view of what she... And I took, for 3 days, I took black and white pictures mapping her footprints on the stage. And it was a beautiful pattern, every time she would do a particular piece, I would see. And then one of the dancers she was dancing to had the tal and the bowl, talin tatai theta, talin tatai theta. So then I told myself that why can't I invent a rhyme scheme, an Indian new rhyme scheme, A-B-A-C-C-A, A-B-A-C-C-A. So this poem is constructed with that particular rhyme scheme. Now it's part of the prosody books that there are some poets from India who contributed in the English language. Of course, Indians have no idea of this. We are 30 years behind research. So that's the structure of the poem. But I have to say, all this is unimportant. All this erudition and glibness is unimportant. The reason I wrote the poem was I saw this gorgeous woman dancing on stage, and I fell flat on my face. I fall in love very easily. It's usually one way. Sometimes it's many ways. But of course, the dancer had no idea. So the reason I wrote the poem was I said, my God. Everything else is part of the academia, the structure, and the diphthongs and the gerunds. Anyway, just the rhyme scheme is also embedded in a kind of Hopkins style. They're not end-stopped. So they're not rhyme at the end of the line, but it turns around and rhymes in the middle of the next line. Bharatanatyam dancer for XXX. Can't do repeat. Though she's a good friend of mine now. I have to say, there were some benefits. Spaces in the electric air divide themselves in circular rhythms as the slender grace of your arms and bell-tied ankles describe a geometric topography, real, cosmic, one that once reverberated continually in a prescribed courtyard of an ancient temple in South India. As your eyelids flit and flirt and match the subtle abhinay in a flutter of eyelashes, your pupils create an unusual focus. Sight, only ciliary muscles blessed and cloaked in celestial kajal could possibly enact. The raw brightness of Kanjivaram silk, of your breath, and the nobility of antique silver adorns you and your gowns, reminding us of the treasure chest that is only half exposed, disclosed just enough, barely, for art in its purest form never reveals all. Even after the arc lights have long faded, the audience now invisible has taken over. Here I can still see your pirouettes, frozen as time-lapse exposures. Feel the murmuring shadow of an accompanist's intricate graph in this theatre of darkness. A darkness where oblique memories of my quiet Kalakshetra days filter, matching your very own of another time, where darkness itself is sleeping light, light that merges, reshapes, and ignites, dancing delicately in the half-light. But it is the sacred darkness that endures, melting light with desire, desire that simmers and sparks the radiance of your quiet femininity, as the female dancer now illuminates everything visible, clear, poetic, passionate, and ice pure. Now I'm reading Syam's most favorite poem. So this one's called Desire. This was a challenge I took upon myself. I mean, we are in this country with such a rich and amazing history of erotic sculptures, poetry, a lot of it A.K. Ramanujam has translated. But the more modern we are getting, the more regressive I think we are becoming. What happens to all that tradition? So I took upon myself, as I said, as a modern feminist man, can I write erotic poems? So I gave myself this task and wrote 16 poems called Lines of Desire, 16 movements on erotica. In fact, 6 of these poems have been used by a ballet dancer in New York who I've never met, and she's done this beautiful production with white chiffon and white flowers and white candles, and this most transcendental piece I've ever seen. So I'll read just one poem from here. Desire. Under the soft, translucent linen, the ridges around your nipples harden at the thought of my tongue. You, lying inverted like the letter C, arch yourself deliberately, wanting the warm press of my lips. It's wet to coat the skin that is bristling, burning, breaking into sweats of desire, sweet juices of imagination. But in fact, I haven't even touched you. At least, not yet.
ആസക്തി, മൃദുല, സുതാര്യം, ഉള്ളുടുപ്പിനുള്ളിലൂടെ നിന്റെ മുലക്കൺ പൊളികൾ അനുഭവിക്കുന്നു. എന്റെ നാവിനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള ഓർമ്മകളാൽ നീ ഒരു റാ പോലെ മറഞ്ഞു കിടക്കുന്നു. എന്റെ ചുണ്ടിന്റെ ഇളം ചൂട് നിന്നിലേക്ക് അമരാൻ കമാനം പോലെ വളയുന്നു. രോമാഞ്ചമെരിയുന്ന ചർമ്മത്തിനു മുകളിൽ നനവിന്റെ ഒരു മേലങ്കി. ആസക്തിയുടെ കൊച്ചു വിയർപ്പു തുള്ളികളാൽ നിറയുന്നു സങ്കല്പത്തിന്റെ മധുരരസം. നേര് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഞാൻ നിന്നെ ഒന്ന് തൊട്ടിട്ട് പോലുമില്ല ഇതുവരെ.
It's interesting, whenever I read the poem, I see the audience and all the burqas are going down. The men especially look more further on the floor than the women. Says something about our Indianness in some ways. Yes, so I think I'm happy to answer questions, discuss, and so on. You need to leave, so I understand.
Yeah, I have to leave. So I am leaving my dear friend here. So please make use of him. Please don't leave him, but make use of him. And for your for your aesthetic experience and for your research. Thank you.